Good evening. Welcome to Northbeat. I'm Megan Roberts. We begin in the Northwest Territories, where there are questions about a decision to discontinue a midwifery expansion program in Yellowknife. It was one of the many proposals in the GNWT budget aimed at cutting costs. But what MLA says, it's not the right move. Take a listen.
Mr. Speaker, no midwives were consulted on this decision. The program currently has 2 summer students, both of whom are studying outside the territory to become midwives and desire to return to Yellowknife to practice. They told me on the weekend, quote, "If this program is canceled, I'll have to work elsewhere and likely leave the NWT," end quote. They're also concerned that this means that they will have to pay back the funds they received from the NWT Health and Social Services bursary program. Mr. Speaker, why are we making short-sighted decisions that reduce service to folks who are giving birth and reducing options for students who began their studies in good faith that their work would help their fellow Northerners?
Mr. Speaker, I just want to clarify the expansion of the midwifery service into Yellowknife has been proposed. Existing midwifery service in Fort Smith and Hay River are not affected. The Health and Social Services system proposed this into Yellowknife, but there has been years of recruitment and retention challenges in the Yellowknife midwifery area. Despite years of dedicated efforts, advocacy, there's just been a continuation of this. But I just want to make sure that, the members know and the public know. In addition to this, it's important to remember that the expansion of the midwifery service into Yellowknife is an enhancement to the existing birthing options that already exist.
That was NWT Health and Social Services Minister Lisa Semler responding to a question from MLA Kate Reid about the end of the midwifery expansion program in Yellowknife. The Midwives Association of the Northwest Territories also weighed in on this. It posted a survey about midwifery on social media and asked people who support midwifery to write to their MLAs. A record number of candidates are running for Dene National Chief. 6 people have put their names forward for the position that also doubles as the NWT Regional Chief for the Assembly of First Nations. Luke Carroll has more.
Some familiar faces are vying for the role of Dene National Chief. That includes incumbent Gerald Antoine, his predecessor Norman Yake-Ula, former Clean Grand Chief George McKenzie, Kaloodache First Nation Chief April Martel, former Saw-2 MLA Polly Chinna, and former Smith's Landing First Nation Chief Jerry Cheesy. Kit Spence is the returning officer who is running the election. He says they received 7 submissions to run for Dene National Chief. They rejected one of them because it did not include 2 nominations from a sitting Dene Chief, which is required. Spence laid out the rules for the election in a news conference on Monday.
Candidates are not allowed to use administrative resources during this campaign, so anybody who is associated with the Dene Nation or with a band not allowed to use those resources in their campaigning. This campaign must be run entirely on personal resources.
The election will be online and in person. It will take place at the Dene National Assembly in Fort Good Hope on July 24th. Luke Carroll, CBC News, Yellowknife.
The Dutcho First Nations Annual Assembly has been postponed. The event was scheduled to take place in Nahanni Butte, NWT from June 11th to 13th, but wildfires and fire bans in the region have elders and leaders saying it should be put on hold. They're worried about the safety and well-being of communities and participants. DFN says it was a difficult decision to postpone the assembly, and it'll announce a new date as soon as possible. 4 Inuit families are part of a new pilot program that helps renters become homeowners in Nunavut. The partnership is between the Territory's Housing Corporation and the Kitikmeot Inuit Association. The families get a rental unit in this 4-plex in Cambridge Bay. The cost will be similar to leases for Government of Nunavut employees, and the families need to take part in finance and home ownership skills training.
You think about just regular preventative maintenance, like changing filters on your furnace or things of that nature. So we'll incorporate that type of learning into the education program, as well as budgeting, as well as spending time with them just around mortgage financing, because that's, you know, a new concept as well.
At the end of the program, the 4 families will be offered a $30,000 grant to purchase one of the Housing Corporation's units. The government of Nunavut is trying to develop new early learning and childcare legislation. It's holding public consultations across the territory and says the Child Daycare Act needs to be more reflective of people living in Nunavut. The new legislation is meant to place importance on Inuit-centered learning and provide accessible and safe childcare. People from communities have been speaking out about what they'd like to see in it.
It has to better reflect Nunavut culture, language, and IQ principles, and that Inuit societal values should be in them. That we continue to hear the importance of our language of Inuit to be spoken at an early age in daycares.
Information from the consultations will be put together in a report. It'll be used to help inform draft legislation. People can also submit their feedback in an online survey on the Government of Nunavut's website before May 31st. Israel says it will investigate its airstrike in Rafah overnight. The Hamas-run health ministry says the attack killed 45 Palestinians who are sheltering in the area. The attack came hours after Hamas launched a barrage of rockets at Tel Aviv for the first time in months. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu described the deaths as a tragic mistake. The airstrike has sparked global outrage, and it happened less than 3 days after the UN World Court ordered Israel to abandon its offensive in Rafah. Sarah Coates reports.
The international reaction is continuing to pour in the wake of Sunday night's attack on an area in Rafah where many Palestinian refugees were sheltering. Now, residents in that area are describing terror, while paramedics have told AFP that people were simply ripped to pieces. We now have reaction from the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He says that this is a tragic error, while the IDF spokesperson has come out to say that the military did not expect the strike to harm civilians, saying that before the attack, many steps were taken to reduce the chances of harm to uninvolved people, including a visual aerial inspection, the use of precision weaponry and intelligence information, adding that the IDF's top-tier fact-finding mechanism will investigate. We've heard from the UN refugee agency UNRWA for Palestinian refugees saying that a number of its employees remain missing, saying that nowhere in Gaza is safe, no person in Gaza is safe, describing the area as hell.
What we have seen in the immediate hours is that Israel continues the military action that has been asked to stop. Also, Hamas is launching rockets against Israel, so both sides don't respect the ruling of the court.
Now, this comes amid reports that these hostage and ceasefire negotiations may in fact begin once again this coming week, although the Israeli Prime Minister is vowing to push on with this war. He's also slamming claims that he is blocking these talks, saying that this is lies, adding instead of putting pressure on Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar, it's put on the Israeli government. Certainly a lot of hope here on the ground for the families of these more than 120 Israeli hostages that do remain in the Gaza Strip. They have been there now for more than 230 days. While there's a lot of hope that these talks may once again resume, there's really not a lot of optimism. In Tel Aviv, Sarah Coates reporting for CBC News.
The University of Toronto took legal action today against pro-Palestinian protesters. The school is seeking an injunction to clear demonstrators from its downtown campus.
U of T went to court and sought an injunction to essentially compel the court to call the police because they don't want to do that, right? They understand that it is optically horrible and horrific for them to call their police on their own students.
It does take some time to follow due process so that whatever conclusions are reached and whatever sanctions are recommended have indeed proper purchase.
That's the U of T president answering a question about whether the university will take action against some demonstrators. The university issued a trespass notice Friday, ordering protesters to leave by this morning, but the encampment remains. A date for a hearing is expected to be set on Tuesday. Meanwhile, in Montreal, a judge has made a decision about a protest at the Université du Québec à Montréal. The judge ordered protesters to clear a 2-meter space alongside the building where they're set up. They've also been ordered to remove any materials blocking doors, windows, and security cameras. The university in Montreal is not looking to have the entire encampment taken down. University presidents are defending their approach to combating anti-Semitism on campus since the October 7th Hamas attack on Israel. Several of them appeared before a parliamentary committee studying anti-Jewish hatred and Islamophobia. This as police investigate gunfire that damaged a private Jewish school for girls in Toronto. Rafi Boudjikanian has more.
Angry and shocked, angry that we have to explain to our girls why this is happening.
An unusual Monday morning at this Toronto elementary school for Jewish girls, where the weekend was unusual too. Police investigating after they say suspects fired multiple shots. Today, a revelation: Toronto police are not investigating alone.
The RCMP obviously have responsibility from a national security context, and they're very much engaged with the Toronto Police Service. And I hope very much that the community in Toronto understands that we're bringing every law enforcement tool to bear to hold those responsible for this hateful and violent crime to account.
MPs were also focused on anti-Semitism in higher education on Monday.
I cannot believe that in my lifetime we were having university presidents testifying before the parliamentary committee about anti-Semitism on campus.
University presidents defending their approach on fighting anti-Jewish hatred.
Do you acknowledge anti-Semitism is a significant problem on your campus?
Yes.
President Gertler?
Yes.
Their answers sometimes left MPs wanting, even as the University of Toronto has filed an injunction to try and shut down the pro-Palestinian encampment on its grounds this morning.
That's a symbol that glorifies terrorism by Hamas. That sits at the front of the encampment. Now, don't you think that the university's code of conduct would suggest that something like that is against the code of conduct?
We have asked the student organizers of the encampment to remove signage and language which is offensive.
The University of Toronto also said it's referred 38 incidents to Toronto police. It believes about a half dozen of those could qualify as hate speech or hateful acts. The MP's goal is to write a report on anti-Semitism. They will tackle Islamophobia on campus as well. Rafi Boudjikanian, CBC News, Ottawa.
Makimuksak palilaw kapta awla jina lakpo kugyang mulo amalo kokbiyo yamo kinga diwaling mulo pangolo asyang miu muna toy mo ino daily takpa makimuksak palilaw sa mo tay mabuhat taling ni pilariyo lak sa inyo amichwalo walang mo.
When we see Team Canada on the world stage, we're witnessing pure greatness. What we don't see is their struggle. We don't see Maggie McNeil navigating her anxiety, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander getting cut from his high school team, or Ellie Black hearing she's just too old to compete. What we don't see makes us who we are. We're all bravely facing the odds in our lives, and our bravery is our victory.
This is the CFBC's largest detachment, home to elite units, federal and municipal scope. Congratulations on making the cut.
Have you spoken with your father?
We're coming for you and everyone like you.
I would rather be Baroque than blue. There's lots of reasons to not be a cop. And a Surrey girl should know all of them.
Maybe you should reconsider the uniform and everything that it represents.
I'd rather fight from inside it to make a change.
Everyone listen up.
Bursting with labor.
All these guys 21?
Where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Owning an NHL team.
Penguins had us review your offer, and it looks good.
Wow.
Get me on the phone with Cops Coliseum. Tell them I want to buy it.
Welcome back. The highway connecting Fort Liard NWT to British Columbia is once again open. It had been closed for weeks because of a wildfire burning in the area. It's the same fire that forced residents of Fort Nelson to evacuate more than 2 weeks ago. But today, good news for them as well. As of this morning, they are allowed to go back home.
Excited. Just actually have my house and to be home in my hometown. I've been here 16 years. I'm actually in the clothes I was evacuated in. So I was like so happy to be home.
More than 4,500 evacuees have been out of their homes. Essential workers have been there over the past few days to get services up and running. The mayor is telling people to fuel up and bring a few days of essential supplies back with them. Residents will need to remain on high alert and be ready to leave again since there are still fires burning nearby. When wildfires tear through communities and land, a question remains. What do you do with all the burnt trees? It's on the mind of some Nova Scotians as they mark 1 year since a wildfire destroyed more than 150 homes and thousands of trees. Some of those have now been removed, but they may just return one day in a different form. Allie Thompson brings us that story.
I was happy to be able to clear those trees along the Hammonds Plains Road where people relive that trauma every single time they go to and from their community.
I think the good news for this is that these trees are being harvested, they are being processed, and they are having a second life in someone's home.
I understand what they're going through, but as a biologist and an ecologist, I also see the incredible pace of forest renewal that ensues after a fire.
It's been a year since a wildfire swept through parts of Upper Tantallon and Hammonds Plains, destroying 151 homes in its path. But there's a less talked about casualty of the fast-moving fire: thousands of trees. Many of those have now been cleared. For some, it's been cathartic, but others say they should have been left alone.
This is part of life at Forest Kids Early Learning in Hammonds Plains. But it wasn't possible until recently. The trail to their outdoor classroom has been littered with burnt trees, blown over by high winds.
Come here, you guys!
Having many of those trees cleared away means little feet can march down the path once again.
Well, you caught us at a good time because we're kind of getting used to it now. If you had asked me a couple of months ago, I probably would be crying right now, but we are getting used to it.
Coltwitz is one of many property owners working with a group of organizations to have burnt trees cleared from their land. Matt Willett of Wagner Forest has been spearheading the effort. He says many people didn't have insurance coverage for landscaping. Willett says the fire was intense enough to kill the softwood trees, but it only burnt the outer layer. The inside is still perfect for lumber.
We targeted the softwood. They're the trees that are going to blow over. They're the trees that are going to, that they're certainly not going to survive, and that have a really good end use. They're literally going back into the homes that are being rebuilt in the community.
That's right. The lumber from these trees will likely help rebuild homes here. That's because the mill they're headed to sells their products locally.
It's not hard to pick out which trees at Freeman Lumber came from Upper Tantallon and Hammonds Plains. The 200-year-old mill in Greenfield has tweaked its scanning and sorting technology to figure out which has a scorched outer shell, given that's not normally an imperfection they deal with.
My boss, or we have two owners of the mill here, they said we're landowners too, right? If our forest burnt that on land that we own, we'd want someone to help us clean it up and get a new forest started. And that was really it. Majority of the forest that we have managed or worked on that was burnt was in Tantallon, not so much in Shelburne. But we did donate, 6 figures worth of lumber to the fire efforts in Shelburne to rebuild the houses down there.
The mill is compensating people with bigger lots for their trees. Some with smaller lots are having trees cleared at no charge. But others didn't have enough softwood to take part in the project, or their lots were inaccessible for the machinery. Willett says there's another benefit to clearing these trees, removing fuel for any future fires that may come through.
If you can imagine that you had a garden that was growing and you didn't weed your garden and all the weeds were coming up, it was very, very thick. And if a fire went through that, there's a lot more fuel there and the fire would be a lot more intense.
It's a claim that's disputed by Donna Crosland, who has dedicated her life to forest ecology.
It's not aiding forest ecology. The forest recovers on its own.
Crosland says she would have left the trees be. She says forests renew at an incredible pace following a wildfire, the charred stumps providing perches for birds and habitat for other wildlife. She says once an area is burned, it's unlikely to reburn. That's because the fine fuels, such as twigs, needles, and leaves, have already been burned up.
We are a finger of land sticking out into the Atlantic Ocean. And so it's very moist here. It's often rather cool and damp, lots of rain. And so we have an amazing decay cycle. We need to retain our forest cover. And we need to not think that thinning the forest or salvaging the forest is aiding anything but the mill. Almost like telling a burn victim they need a vigorous massage. No, you need a period of healing and care, great care.
Whatever the best practices are, the priority for some residents is to be rid of the scorched trees so they can heal without the daily reminder of what happened.
So I think the good news for this is that these trees are being harvested, they are being processed, and they are having a second life in someone's home. And considering we lost 151 homes and over 200 structures, this really is a little bit of good news for us to know that this wood is now going into homes to be built.
This fall, tree planting will be happening across wildfire-impacted regions. A group of residents from the Upper Tantallon area have applied to Nova Scotia's Thriving Forest program, which uses federal and provincial funding to plant trees. And Freeman Lumber will be helping with tree planting efforts in both Shelburne and Halifax counties. For Kotwitz and the Forest Kids, they'll be happy to see new trees in the ground.
We don't feel too sad about having them gone. We felt sad to see them burnt. But now that the ones are gone, we know that there's room for regrowth. But to see the ones that are still there burnt, we're waiting patiently to see if there's going to be any green on them. Yeah, we look at them every time we come up because it looks to me like there's not going to be, but I'm pretty sure there will be.
In the meantime, they'll be hunting for signs of life on the black trees that remain. Allie Thompson, CBC News, Hammonds Plains.
A beloved annual White Horse event is back. The first installment of Arts in the Park happened today, and it's already drawing a crowd. Maria Tobin takes us there.
Since the late 90s, Whitehorse has rung in the summer with the event, which features live music and art. Residents already have lots to say.
Oh, it's fabulous. It's so wonderful to be outside, and we have a little bit of warm weather, some sunshine, and really an amazing group.
Local band Major Funk performed.
It's time to tell the truth of what
while artist Janet Patterson returned to share how to make fossils out of plastics. She says if she isn't working as an artist, you'll still find her taking in the scene at LePage Park.
You can bring your lunch and sit there and enjoy free music and art, and it's just a really nice way to spend a lunch hour.
For some, it's near and dear to their hearts, like Erin Brost, who used to perform. Now, she encourages others to dance.
I played at it like 10 years ago, so yeah, I like to come watch the performers, and maybe one day in the future I'll play again.
And people of all ages hit the dance floor today, including some dogs, which is surely a sign of a positive kickoff. Different bands will hit the stage every day, while artists will change weekly. Arts in the Park is set to run until July. Maria Tobin, CBC News, Whitehorse.
The family and friends of Howie Benwell celebrated his life this weekend in Fort Smith. The 30-year-old died tragically earlier this year in a plane crash that took the lives of 5 others. Carla Ulrich was there.
He's the kind of guy that would learn a song in like seconds, minutes sort of thing.
There was live music, food, and a lot of love shared for the talented musician gone too soon. Howie Fest is what they are calling it. Around 200 people were there to honor Benwell, a young man who they say was extra special.
Well, Howie was an important guy, man. It was a tragic loss that we had to endure. We got to have him with us for 30 beautiful years. So we got to look at the positives that we had shared together and realize that Howie's still with us. He's just not in physical form where you could hug him and squeeze his cheeks or anything, but he's still there.
Crystal Benwell was grateful to the volunteers who made it happen, friends of Howie, like Dougie Meidel, who helped organize, emceed, and performed at the event.
Brings people together, and Howie also really loved music, and he participated with a lot of musicians in this town. And I think, he'd be really happy, we're continuing this in honor of him and in memory of him. So, yeah, I think it's just very important for, people to come together and just, forget a moment of whatever's going on in their lives and just listen to music and heal in a sense.
Benwell was also thankful to the community for the donations that made this celebration happen. Friends and family of Howie Benwell are hoping to make it an annual event. Carla Ulrich, CBC News, Fort Smith.
And that is Northbeat for tonight. For news anytime, go to cbc.ca/north. Thank you for watching. I'm Megan Roberts. Have a good night.
You're gonna scare me.
Look out! Ain't nobody gonna stop me.
We have a new world record.
Oh my God.
We're a team.
We fight the best we can.
Who cries more, winners or losers?
Cry if you want to cry.
Can heartbreak help break records?
You want to be great? You need to sacrifice.
Do bigger fans have higher blood pressure?
How's your heart rate?
Why do we love rooting for underdogs?
Gotta support the home team.
What makes top dogs go the distance? How far will champions go to win?
I was just curious.
Does it matter if they have nothing to lose?
Is that a yes?
When you get curious, you get CBC.
One of these days, we're gonna have to grow up. But today is not that day.
I don't want us to get older either.
Son of a Critch. Watch free on CBC Gem.
Her particular skill set can be helpful to us.
She's a con artist. I need to get off that boat and back to being a full-time detective. And you need to stay out of prison. The best way we do that is to keep our heads down and do as we're told.
Q with Tom Power. Available now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.